The story begins years before Pearl Harbor, long before the smoke, the shock, and the disbelief that would grip America. And it begins with one man inside the U.S. military who saw the danger coming like a storm on the horizon. A general who studied Japan's rise, watched every move they made, and kept telling Washington that the Pacific was drifting toward disaster. His warnings weren't subtle, they weren't half-hearted. He said openly that a strike on American forces was not only possible, but likely. And instead of being praised, he was ignored, sidelined, and quietly pushed out of the conversation. That general was Billy Mitchell, a man whose entire career was a fight against tradition, politics, and the uncomfortable truth that America was not ready for the next era of warfare. Mitchell was one of those rare figures who saw the future before anyone else wanted to accept it. He believed that air power would decide the next war. Not battleships, not old tactics. Air power. Fast, precise, devastating. And in the minds of many in Washington, that made him dangerous. Mitchell had spent years in the Pacific, watching Japanese strategy evolve. He saw how rapidly Japan industrialized. He saw their naval expansion. He watched how their military leaders talked openly about controlling the Pacific. And long before Pearl Harbor was even imaginable for most Americans, he predicted exactly how an attack would unfold. A sudden strike on Hawaii, launched from carriers, aimed at knocking out the U.S. Pacific Fleet before America could respond. He put this in reports. He put it in memos. He said it in hearings. He said it in briefings. He said it to anyone who would listen and to many who didn't want to. And over time, the more he pushed, the more people in power saw him as a nuisance rather than a visionary. Mitchell wasn't just warning in vague terms. He gave details. He said the strike would come early in the morning. He said it would come by surprise. He said Japan would hit the fleet while it was docked. He said carriers would be the centerpiece of the attack. And he said Hawaii was the most vulnerable location in America's entire Pacific defense system. These warnings didn't come out of nowhere. Mitchell had tested his theories in demonstrations. He shocked the world when he proved that aircraft could sink battleships. To the old guard of the Navy, that was almost an insult. Battleships were symbols of power, prestige, and tradition. And here was a general saying, all of this can be taken out in minutes. Instead of updating strategy, many officials attacked the messenger. Mitchell was accused of exaggeration, spreading fear, and undermining military morale. He was eventually put on trial for insubordination after openly criticizing Army and Navy leadership for ignoring the changing nature of war. The trial became a national spectacle. Mitchell lost his position, his status, and his influence. He resigned from the military in frustration. But even after he was pushed out, he kept warning the country. In articles, in speeches, and even in books, he described the same pattern. Japan would strike first, and they would strike hard. The most chilling part is that Mitchell didn't simply say Japan might attack Hawaii. He described nearly the exact blueprint for Pearl Harbor: aircraft appearing suddenly from the sky, ships at anchor unable to escape, hangars and runways destroyed before pilots could even get airborne. In his own words, he said that if Japan ever went to war with America, the first blow would fall on the fleet at Pearl Harbor. In the 1930s, as tensions rose across the world, Mitchell's warnings aged like prophecy. Japan expanded aggressively across Asia. They moved into Manchuria. They pushed deeper into China. They built up their navy with astonishing speed. And even then, few people in Washington took the danger seriously. Diplomacy was still the favored answer. Many leaders believed war in the Pacific would be slow, predictable, and easy to detect months in advance. Mitchell completely disagreed. He said the next war would come without warning. It would rely on speed and surprise, and it would hit America while most people were still asleep. As Japan grew bolder, American intelligence began picking up signals that something was building. Japan was training more pilots, constructing more carriers, and rehearsing long-distance air operations. But even then, the dominant view inside the U.S. military was that Japan would never dare attack the United States directly. They believed a strike on Hawaii was too risky, too far, too provocative. Mitchell believed the opposite. Japan needed a decisive opening blow, and he kept repeating that Hawaii was the key. In the months leading up to Pearl Harbor, the Pacific was growing more tense by the day. Washington placed embargoes on oil and steel. Japan saw this as a direct threat. Negotiations stalled, and behind the scenes, Japanese military leaders decided that delaying action any longer would only weaken their position. They believed the only way to secure their empire was to hit America so hard, so fast, that the U.S. wouldn't be able to recover in time. Mitchell had been predicting this logic for decades. Even after he died in 1936, his writings continued to circulate among officers who respected his foresight. Some young pilots studied his ideas. Some strategists quietly admitted he had been right about air power. But officially, Mitchell's warnings were remembered more as dramatic opinions than urgent forecasts. Then came December 7th, 1941. Just as he predicted, the attack arrived early in the morning. Just as he predicted, aircraft launched from carriers appeared suddenly over Oahu. Just as he predicted, the Pacific Fleet was hit while it was docked and vulnerable. And just as he predicted, America was thrown into a conflict it wasn't fully prepared for. The shock was so great that within days, people began to revisit Mitchell's old reports. Officers whispered to each other that he had described this exact scenario. Journalists rediscovered his court-martial. Politicians who had once dismissed him now claimed they always respected his vision. But the truth was undeniable. One man had warned America with accuracy that bordered on impossible, and he had been silenced for it. After the attack, the military rushed to adopt the ideas Mitchell had fought for his entire career. Carriers instantly became the centerpiece of American strategy. Air power became the tip of the spear across the Pacific. And America realized that the old world of battleship warfare had vanished in a single morning. It was exactly the transformation Mitchell had predicted, though he never lived to see it. But the story doesn't end simply with the phrase, "Mitchell was right." The deeper question is why his warnings were ignored, and the answer lies in how institutions often react to uncomfortable truths. Mitchell was ahead of his time. He challenged the pride of powerful people. He criticized leaders openly and bluntly, and bureaucracies rarely reward someone who is both right and disruptive. Mitchell's personality worked against him. He was bold, loud, dramatic, and impatient. He spoke in ways that embarrassed officials who preferred polite disagreement. And even though he had evidence, demonstrations, and logic on his side, the system chose stability over innovation. It's a pattern repeated throughout history. People who predict the next war, the next crisis, the next breakthrough are usually ignored until the moment arrives. Mitchell was part of that tradition, a visionary who made the mistake of being too honest too early. Years after his death, the U.S. government formally recognized his accuracy. Many historians now call him the father of the modern Air Force. Pilots still study his theories. And the attack on Pearl Harbor is often cited as the moment when the world realized just how right he truly was. But there's something even more important about Mitchell's warning. He wasn't trying to be dramatic. He wasn't trying to be a prophet. He was simply doing what he believed was necessary to protect the country. He had seen enough of Japan's rise to know where it was heading, and he understood that the next war wouldn't wait politely for America to be ready. He predicted that America had a blind spot, and on December 7th, that blind spot cost the nation dearly. Imagine the frustration he must have felt, writing reports no one would read, giving speeches that were dismissed as exaggeration, watching leaders cling to traditions that no longer made sense, and then being punished for telling the truth too loudly. Mitchell knew he would never win popularity contests, but he believed the danger was real, and he believed silence was worse than conflict. His story reveals something uncomfortable. Sometimes it takes catastrophe to validate the people who saw it coming, and sometimes the warnings that seem dramatic in the moment turn out to be the ones that could have saved thousands had they been taken seriously. In the aftermath of Pearl Harbor, the U.S. military scrambled to transform itself. They invested heavily in airfields, pilots, carrier fleets, and radar systems. All the things Mitchell said were essential. The change was so rapid and so thorough that by the middle of the war, America's air power became the most advanced and dominant in the world. Mitchell's ideas eventually shaped the entire Pacific campaign. The battles of Midway, Coral Sea, and the island-hopping strategy all revolved around the concept that air power could break enemy fleets and protect American forces. These victories proved that Mitchell had seen the blueprint for the future decades before anyone else accepted it. But while history eventually vindicated him, the personal cost to Mitchell never went away. He spent the last years of his life watching the world drift toward the conflict he had been warning about. He saw Japan tightening its grip on Asia. He saw diplomacy failing. And he knew the country he loved was still unprepared for what was coming. There's almost a tragic irony to his life. He dedicated himself to protecting America, yet the very people he was trying to help pushed him aside. And when the disaster he predicted finally happened, he wasn't there to say, "I told you so." But if he had been alive, he probably wouldn't have said it. Because Mitchell wasn't motivated by ego. He wasn't motivated by wanting to be right. He was motivated by the belief that America needed to wake up before it was too late. Most people today know Pearl Harbor as a day of shock, a day when the nation felt the ground shift under its feet. But long before that day, one man had mapped out exactly how it would unfold. His reports now read like a script of the attack. And when America looks back at how the Pacific War started, it's impossible not to wonder what might have been different if Mitchell's voice hadn't been silenced. His story is a reminder that warnings don't always come from mysterious places. Sometimes they come from people with experience, logic, and a clear view of the future. People the system refuses to listen to because the truth is too uncomfortable. If Mitchell had been taken seriously, Hawaii could have been reinforced, radar could have been expanded, patrols could have been increased, the Pacific Fleet could have been dispersed. The attack might still have happened, but the damage would have been far smaller. That's the real tragedy of this story. Not just that a general predicted Pearl Harbor, but that he predicted it with enough detail for the country to protect itself. And the system still chose to look the other way.